The global music world hit its rock bottom when at age 75, André Rieu, thinking of the waltz, fell to his demi-semi performance, and everything changed after that. But what triggered that collapse at the height of his brilliance? To understand, we have to know what exactly happened in his life. Born on October 1, 1949, André Rieu was born into a family at a time when families wanted discipline above a child's sanity. He was the third of 6 children, with a father whose baton ruled the house as mercilessly as he ruled the stage. His father, also named André, was a famous conductor respected by orchestras. But at his own house, he was feared by children. There were no lullabies in their home, no laughter. Love was abstract and cold. "My parents didn't love me," André would later say, not as a wound dug up, but as a quiet admission of fact. His mother was obsessed with grades and skills. She saw imagination as a liability. When a teacher praised his artistry, it was shouted back at him through the house like an accusation. Creative impulse was weakness, not strength. But when he became 5 years old, everything changed. A slender, graceful 18-year-old took him under her wing. She was his first violin mentor. She didn't reprimand him. She coaxed him to feel. In her bow sweep, young André found something he'd never known. Freedom, not love, not romance, just a tremor that sounded like life. And he was undoubtedly in awe. Then Heget into music. That magnetic feeling. It was not victory. It was the start of something that would arise deep inside him. Other children practiced scales. He chased resonance. Yet joy came with a cost. In his teen years, his burgeoning passion for waltzes clashed with his father's austerity. At home, his beau's lyricism was scorned. "I didn't raise you to play waltzes," his father screamed at him. Those words didn't just rebuke style. They aimed to kill his soul. The final hammer to his soul came around 1968, when Marjorie appeared. André's chosen companion, not a conductor score. His mother met her with fury. "Leave," she ordered. Rejection piled on top of rejection. That very night, André walked out. He never turned back. Their home remained untouched, an empty shell as he rose to stardom. His parents did attend his concerts, not once. Despite arenas packed with adoring fans, the silence at home was a memory he couldn't shake. "I spent years in therapy trying to understand why Michael who'd felt so hollow," he once confessed. The applause never filled that void. But through music, he finally felt seen. The violin wasn't simply an instrument. It was a lifeline. Whenever played, windows opened. In 1978, after years of formal orchestral testing and enduring the sterile echo of concert halls, André broke and started the rebellion. He launched the Maastricht Salon Orchestra. 12 dreamers. No costumes, with a lot of hope. These young dreams were performing in modest community halls, backyard weddings, forgotten border towns. They were playing music just for the sake of music. No critics, no grand stages, just sound, shared, human. A loft that was on the outside, but inside there was someone else at the heart of all operations. It was Marjorie. She was steady, precise, unseen, and handled business meetings, bookings, and ghostwriting arrangements. She was the invisible force behind his visible magic. When he hesitated at the idea of buying a crumbling castle, she quipped, "Sell more records." Not for his interest or curiosity, but to build the future. This quiet revolution was televised. It was leaked. In 1987, he formally founded the Johann Strauss Orchestra. 12 musicians, but a radical mission to restore music's heartbeat. They ditched solemn formality. Instead of black tailcoats, they wore color, inviting joy. Their 1988 New Year's Day premiere, filled with dancing lights and laughing melodies, was electric. Critics laughed at them, but audiences surged. They weren't attending a concert. They were reclaiming music. By 1995, on one of Europe's grandest stages, the UEFA Champions League final in Vienna, there was a spontaneous transformation that took place. Rieu strode onto the pitch with his orchestra as Shikovich's waltz news soared. Football fans paused, swayed, and clapped. The stadium was alight with grace. The tension of sport melted by strain. When Ajax scored, the timing felt cosmic. The moment became legend. Overnight, Strauss and company flew to #1 in the Netherlands for 19 weeks. It was something unheard of for classical music. It sold millions globally. Australia followed right after that. In Melbourne, over 38,000 people filled stadium seats to witness a fairy tale in real time. Not only that, they had 8 of the top 10 DVDs in the country. All of them belonged to him. He stood shoulder to shoulder with pop icons like Pink and AC/DC. After all that success, there were still some who didn't like the thing he was doing. It was the traditionalist who recoiled. One conductor spat. Musical pornography, mocking lights and gowns, sneering that joy had no place in art. To Rieu's audiences, however, it meant everything. Dancing families' teary grandparents' emotion had found its stage. When he said, "With us, you don't feel the solemn hush that drives people away," he meant it. He wasn't selling concerts. He was giving away hope to the people. But behind the gilded lights and sold-out stadiums, the maestro was breaking down. In 2010, at the peak of his career, a new problem arose. André was hit with a viral infection that invaded his inner ear. For a violinist, balance is everything. His world tilted. Tours were canceled. Performances called off. The man whose main attraction was saying can do, he was forced to say, "I can't." It was more than illness. It was a fracture, one he hadn't known he carried. To be more precise, it was more than sickness. It was the moment a myth cracked, revealed in shuddering jubilance and blurred reflection. In 2010, at 62, André Rieu was felled by a viral infection of the vestibular nerve. An assault on his inner ear that plunged him into relentless chaos. The room revolved and nothing, not even the ground beneath him, offered stability. He lay bedridden with dizzy eyes scanning walls that spun with merciless motion. The man who had never wavered now felt unanchored. Physicians ordered rest. Physicians ordered rest. The tour schedule, and the man who was once as rigid as a cement wall collapsed like cheap sheet music. Andreas's recovery was very slow. All types of conventional therapy failed. Then came a letter from an Australian fan. In it, he described his own battle with the same infection and offered vestibular exercises that helped him reclaim his balance. André, desperate, followed the advice. Gradually, the distortion came to an end. After months off withdrawal, he stood again. First unsteadily, then firm. With time, he returned to the stage, conducting a tour that marked not just a musical comeback, but a recovery of his reputation. Everyone thought he was back to his perfect self, but in reality, no wound, physical or emotional, heals without leaving its trace. The vertigo receded, but his equilibrium remained vulnerable. In 2012, management was quick to deny the return of disequilibrium issues, but accepted the fact that the ear once assaulted remained a weak spot. They also informed that if there was a chance of illness coming back, he would be in grave danger, especially if he was on stage. Then came 2016 and Leeds on a December tour. The trumpet of despair sounded again. There was a companion that André kept very close in his heart. He always tagged along, and his name was Rieu Merckx, who was a trombonist and a longtime friend. There were reports that backstage he faltered. Fever, breathless confusion. He touched his phone and called Marjorie with a hushed voice. "I didn't want a first concert day like this ever again." For concerts ended like that. Over 40,000 ticket holders were furious. The orchestra, all 125 people, were sent home mid-tour. Flights reversed, tickets refunded. emergency chaos with no way to uphold their quiet dignity. In that pause, something new happened. Pierre, his son, stepped forward. He wasn't just a son or tour manager anymore. He became a shield. No more intercontinental marathons. The pace slowed. Europe-only performances, controlled scheduling, sleep, recovery, a soft fortress built around André's shelf. It wasn't a retreat. It was the correct choice. But if it had been Takina a bit earlier, they wouldn't have had to face the consequences of what was about to happen next. In the meantime, everything relied on Pierre, once responsible for logistics, who had now become curator of tempo. He inserted brakes where André would have bulldozed forward. Every flight, every venue, now passed through a filter. Can he do this without breaking? He became the weight-bearer, allowing André to reclaim his music, not at the cost of himself. That collapse, that decision, rewrote everything. This was not the fall of Maestro. It was the birth of a new 1.1 who understood that every note worth playing must be earned. Not through endurance but care. And in that he became more human, more unforgettable. By summer 2024, the transformation was visible. But not all the wounds had healed. André Rieu, now 75, had built his life on the road, and slowing down came with a hidden cost. For decades, the constant movement had been his oxygen. Now with Pierre tightening the reins, each performance carried a different kind of pressure. The pressure to prove he could still do it, not just for the audience, but for himself. He returned to MRI, his hometown stage that July. It was the safest arena in his calendar, the one place where every face in the crowd knew the history behind the man. The concert sold out instantly, as they had for years. But behind the scenes, the preparation was no longer routine. Medical clearances, oxygen availability backstage, and rest intervals are written into rehearsal blocks. His team, once focused on lighting cues and sound balance, now coordinated with physicians and physical therapists. The audience never saw the checklist taped to the wall of his dressing room. It was a quiet acknowledgement that his body was no longer the silent partner it once was. The list wasn't long, but it was precise. Hydrate before stage, limit encore length, no post-show handshakes until heart rate stabilized. These were rules Pierre enforced with the same seriousness his father had once reserved for tempo markings. Yet, even with the safeguards, there were moments when the old pace tried to break through. On the third night in Rick, he extended a waltz beyond its planned length, lost in the swell of strings. The orchestra followed, the crowd stood, and for a few minutes it felt like the past. But when walked off stage, his shirt clung to him with the same damp heaviness he felt in Mexico City. Pierre's expression said what neither wanted to speak aloud. There was still a line, and they had nearly crossed it. The adjustments weren't just physical, they were artistic. André began rearranging certain pieces, lowering the intensity in ways only trained ears would notice. The high-energy polkas became fewer, ballads, slower waltzes, and orchestral storytelling began to dominate the set lists. Fans embraced the change without realizing it was also a strategy. It was a way to give the illusion of endless stamina while conserving the energy it took to deliver it. Between shows, has spent more time at home than he had in decades. Brick stone streets and garden behind his 15th-century home became his rehearsal hall. Instead of rehearsing for hours with the full orchestra, he practiced privately, keeping his energy bank full for performance days. Friends noticed a softer rhythm to his voice, fewer late-night calls, and a newfound willingness to say no. When André Rieu stepped back onto the stage after his long-held battle, the applause was different. It wasn't just a celebration. It was relief. For months, no one knew if Thinking of the Waltz would perform again. His 2009 viral infection had stopped him mid-tour. Doctors had warned him that pushing too soon could end his career, but walking away from music was never an option for André. The first concert back was in Antwerp. Tickets had sold out before his illness. Many expected a reduced show. Instead, Rieu delivered 3 hours of music without cutting a single number. He greeted his audience with that familiar warmth. Yet, the sharp observer noticed the changes.